Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Sam's33 here, and welcome to the show about Pokemon TCG stuff, of course, mix-up. And today, we're going to be talking about another new card from Plasma Storm, that being an EX, because, you know, those are the only good cards that ever come out of any set, and that card being Victini EX from Plasma Storm. Two great attacks, very interesting card, and yeah, what am I saying? So let's start that over. States have started this past week, and now approaching the second day. I have been testing my deck for states, and it's been tiring, especially while also working on this bi-weekly episode. So in the break between states, I guess, you know, we can always have some fun with some fun decks like Victini EX decks, which are, I mean, there's some competitive ones, but they're mostly rogues. So yeah, if you guys are ready for some Victini EX, I sure am. You know what I'm not ready for? Me continuously talking. So yeah, let's just go to the video, because the video's over there. The video's over there? Okay. To the video! Onward!
I have this feeling about Victini EX. I feel it will either be a very good card, or it will completely flop. A lot like the other EXs with this amount of HP. 110 is a really low number. Any fast deck, i.e. any deck with Hypnotoxic Laser, should be able to take you out on the second turn easy. Most of the other low HP EXs have some sort of way to prevent their low HP from mattering. Mew EX is usually paired with a Selgor, so it will shuffle itself into the deck before your opponent will have a chance at knocking it out. Shaman EX should only be played after your opponent has taken 4 or 5 prizes, and it will usually be very tough for them to knock it out, since Shaman is usually paired with a late game end. Victini, however, is going to be a very big part of your deck if you decide to use it, and will be needed in the early game a lot of the time. Anyway, Victini has 2 attacks, the first being Turbo Energize, which is usually the main reason you'll be playing it. Turbo Energize costs 1 Fire Energy, and lets you search your deck for 2 basic energy of any type and attach them to your bench Pokemon in any way you like. Wow, that sounds amazing. Being able to set up 3 energy attackers to start attacking on the second turn? Darkrai, you've got some competition. While Fire Energy isn't that great a type to pair with the attackers you'll be setting up, it at least makes the inclusion of V-Create Victini a much easier fit, while most decks will have to fit in 2 or 3 otherwise useless Fire Energy. Its second attack has got quite the name, Intensifying Burn. This attack costs 1 Fire and 2 Colorless, and does 50 damage plus an extra 50 if you're attacking an EX. Well, at first glance, this may just look like a poor man's Boufflant, and I mean a really poor man's Boufflant. Even though I probably should have mentioned this earlier, Victini EX has an interesting aspec tool card, Victory Piece, which when attached to Victini, its attacks cost 0 energy. Now, you could use this for Turbo Energize, but why would you waste your time doing that when you can be doing 100 damage on turn 1? For your opponent, Victini is either a very good thing to see you using on the first turn, or an incredibly scary thing to see. So with the power of Turbo Energize and Intensifying Burn, how couldn't you find a way to use this card? The deck I've seen Victini get the most hype in is Victini EX with Rayquaza EX and Electric. The whole idea of having Victini EX in a deck which already has energy acceleration is that Electric, especially the Rayquaza version, is rather slow. On average, you'll get your first good Dragon Burst off on turn 3 or 4 on the earliest. Turn 2 if you're really lucky. But with Victini, you make getting a turn to 180 very possible. You can Turbo Energize turn 1 to get 2 energy on Rayquaza, then attach 1 and either Dynamo or 1 on Rayquaza, or use Energy Switch to move the energy from Victini to Rayquaza. The deck already runs Fire Energy, so at most you'll have to increase that Fire Energy count by 1 or 2. You might think since you're running Victini that you'll be playing Victory Piece, but Victory Piece really shouldn't be necessary, since Computer Search or Dowsing Machine adds a lot of more consistency to the deck, and you're already planning to hit for a huge amount of damage on the second turn. Electric is still of course highly necessary, since Victini will be pretty horrible energy acceleration after the first few turns. Great Eels has always been one of my favorite decks, and one I've stuck by since the release of Rayquaza in the original Dragon Blade and Dragon Blast in Japan. Here's my list at the time I'm writing up this script. In my regular Rayquaza Eels list, I would probably only run 2 Rayquaza, but I have 3 in this deck. The reason for this is to use Turbo Energize, you need a Rayquaza EX on the bench, and having 3 makes it more likely you'll be able to draw into it on the first turn. I would like to have 3 Victini EX as well, but you'll probably only need 1 Victini EX throughout the game, while Rayquaza is a card you'll want in your field all game. 2 Victini will have to do for now. The V-Create Victini is there to be used as your Kling counter, since this version of the deck has no other solid way to hurt Pokemon protected by Plasma Steel. It's much better in this deck than just stuffing some into a Darkrai deck, since you already have Fire Energy. You can Super Rod it back 2 or 3 times, and Electric wants its bench full anyways. For Pokemon Search, I have 3 Ultra Ball and 2 Level Ball. As I said earlier, this deck needs Victini EX and Rayquaza EX out on the first turn, and Ultra Ball helps you search those out much easier. The Energy Surge is to compensate for the Dowsing Machine I have in this deck, so once you've played Energy Surge, you can get it back with Dowsing Machine. It's also just good to choose which energy you want to get. The Energy Switch is to get that lone Fire Energy off your Victini EX when you're ready to get the first big KO off with Dragon Burst. For the supporters, I'm still deciding what split I want between Chorus, Bianca, and Skyla. As you can see, my deck is already decked out for a more Dowsing Machine friendly deck, so Skyla is more solid in here than other electric decks I've played in the past. Also, since you're going to be using Victini EX in the early game for your energy acceleration, Skyla shines more here than other electric decks in this situation because other electric decks need so many things in the early game, and Skyla is usually only good in the late game, but in this deck, Skyla can be good in the early game as well. For some reason, I don't really like Chorus very much in this deck. While I love it in others, I'm probably putting a few more copies than I should, but this deck just doesn't seem to like it. Bianca might be the better choice for this deck, but I can't be certain. As I've said many times in this video, this deck features Dowsing Machine, which I have grown quite fond of since I started using it. Last week's episode, I didn't get to talk about ace-specs very much, since we were stuck with Crystal Edge all the time. Computer Search just feels so vanilla. Get one card. Woo. There's always a chance you could draw that card anyways. On the other hand, Dowsing Machine gives you the power no other card can give you. This lets you run lower copies of cards like Tool Scrapper and Energy Switch that take up a lot of space, and are rarely useful more than just once per game, if not less. Dowsing Machine is also more forgiving towards unlucky Junipers or Ultra Balls, and something like Tool Scrapper is generally only good in the Garbodor matchup, and sometimes the Darkrai matchup, and is always Ultra Ball fodder in other matchups. But since it's almost essential in the Garbodor matchup, Dowsing Machine will let you get it back for the Garbodor matchup, and whatever else you need in other matchups. So how did Victini EX's first appearance go? Well, it's weird. I'm a big fan of Victini EX in this deck. It can really speed you up, and getting the turn 1 Turbo Energized is actually pretty easy, with 5 switch/retreating cards, 2 Skyla, and 6 outs for Fire Energy. Biggest flaw with Victini is that it's 2 very easy prizes for your opponent. The format is much faster than it was before Plasma Storm, and having Victini there as 2 free prizes just makes your opponent's already fast win even faster. And to be honest, I'm just not that big a fan of Rayquaza Electric in this format. Every deck has such high damage output nowadays that 180 isn't quite worth the price of having such a frail and slow deck. I did have one other idea for this episode, but with all the time I needed to test for states, I wasn't able to play as many games with this deck as I wanted. The deck's 2 main Pokemon are Victini EX and Terrakion EX. The goal of this deck is to power up Terrakion EX with Victini EX, then use Terrakion EX's Pump Up Smash to power up the rest of your attackers. Here is the list. This is definitely a much odder way of using Victini EX than our last deck. 2 V-Create Victini is to make the Plasma Kling matchup much easier on you, and prevents 1 from being prized. The 1 Landorus EX is there as a closer, and Hammerhead is a pretty good 1 energy attack, if you can't afford to use Turbo Energize at the time. Braceon Emerging Powers is a way to deal with Keldeo decks. It's not a very good one, but it's better than nothing. It can also start knocking out Squirtles turn 1 with Giga Drain. Sigilyph is just there for fun, mostly. In case your opponent hasn't learned from Plasma Kling, this will sure teach them to put some non-EX attackers in their decks. Super Scoop Up actually has some pretty good synergy with the Terrakion EX. You can scoop up 1 Terrakion EX, and send in another one, then Pump Up Smash the energy back onto it. 2 energy retrieval is a good way to get as much out of Pump Up Smash as possible, as well as a good way to scale up for energy. Super Rod acts as a way to get important attackers for certain matchups back into your deck, or just in case you run out of energy and need to use Turbo Energized. The high count of Skyla is there to allow you to get a victory piece out turn 1, and the deck should be fairly low maintenance, so getting 1 card at a time with Skyla should be enough. Sky Arrow is an odd inclusion. I mostly have it in here as a counter stadium to opponents' Burbank City gyms, but it can also allow you to retreat your Victini EX for free. Victory Piece is the obvious ace-spec here. Being able to do 100 turn 1 is incredibly powerful, and just in case your opponent outspeeds you and you need some way to attack, Victory Piece is there. The energy count is quite high, 16 in total. But with Vicini EX needing 2 energy in your hand for its full potential, and with all the different attackers, a lot of energy seems to be needed. Only 1 psychic energy just because of how situational Sigilyph is. So as I said, I've only played this deck a few times, and the few times I have, it actually isn't half bad. If your opponent can give you a bit of breathing room to turbo energize a few times, you should have an army of Vicini EXs ready in no time. As per Quasi Electric, getting that turn 1 turbo energize is actually quite easy, and with the added power of Victory Piece, it can serve as an early rush deck if needed. The deck struggles a bit with Tornadus EX and other fighting resistant Pokemon. If all else fails, the deck is incredibly fun. Victini EX and Vicini EX are just fun Pokemon to use, and the deck is ripe for great moments. If you're looking for a fun deck for League, you aren't looking anymore because you've got one right here.
And that's going to be a wrap for today's episode. Victini EX is not the great card I anticipated it would be, but it is still definitely a fun card, and if you're wondering why I suddenly have a hat, it's because it's a Victini hat, and in between recording the ending cuts, or in between recording the intro and the outro, I realized that I have this cool Victini hat that I should wear for today. So, yep, Victini hat. So anyway, as I said, States happened, and the first week of States, I actually did well at that event for once. I got top 4 at that States. I was playing Kling Klang, and I got donked in the 3rd game of top 4 by a Tornadus EX. Skylit for computer search for DCE, played Verbank, and that's what happened to me. And that deck went on to win the Pennsylvania States. But anyway, enough about that. Next week's episode should be a report on all 3 of my state championships. It's definitely going to be a fun episode, and I'm excited for tomorrow's States. You might have already been to States if you are watching this, and also for anyone wondering why there's a bunch of like cuts and this big red thing right here, that's because I got kicked in the face. True story. So, if you guys are as ready for States as I am, that was really kind of awkward, then you're ready. You're as ready for States as I am. There's nothing much more to it. So I'll see you guys for my States report in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Later. Bye. My hair is all messy now. Wave bye to the nice people. Whatever. Later. Turn off the thing!